Pimpo YET, the Haitian Diaspora Living in Haiti podcast. It's another week. It's another opportunity to have a conversation. And this time, my co-host.
Yeah, it's me. We here.
Yes,
Mark.
Yes, Pastor Mark Antoine. We're going to have a conversation between us to entre nous, as the song goes. Because we have to do these. Honestly, we need to do it more often, but have these sort of conversations where we can really dissect and provide our perspectives. Because a lot of folks tune in to us. A lot of folks, are inspired by our guests, and I love having our guests on. But a lot of times, it's just the conversations I really want to get into. I don't want to dominate my guest's time. There's some conversations I really want to kind of expand, provide a full perspective from minds, and also, Mark, I'm sure you want to just kind of stretch out and really provide your perspective on certain issues, right? And this issue right here, so relevant, so topical. What's been happening in America, around the world, France, Belgium, Africa, everywhere, about police brutality and the maltreatment of minorities and Black people specifically, has been it's been surprising, the inclusiveness of the response. And it's been further seeing some structural. Certainly not a fraction of what I'm pretty demanding. A lot of folks are, given how deep I know the issue is, but seeing some structural issue, things. Some police departments changing their policies, and so I'm seeing some things, but certainly I wait and see. And so this episode today is really going to be talking about the topic of police brutality. Yep. BLM, activism in general, and then towards the second half of the show, we want to bring it all back home to Haiti specifically, and we want to start talking about colorism. That's a topic that has been really very early on. We knew we had to engage at some point, and I think this is a good time to start talking about that in the context of the larger conversation of what's going on racially. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I think all of those are important topics, and I think our viewers, our listeners, are interested in continuing this conversation, and very, very relevant. So yeah, let's dive into it.
Awesome. Before we dive in, of course, those who are listening right now, the Ma Pimpo Haiti Haitian Diaspora podcast, we're on every single platform. So just so you know, we're on YouTube, Facebook, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. You name it, we're on it. If it's your first time listening, make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that follow, because we're out here very weekly, very consistently having these sort of conversations. We really enjoy having guests on to provide their stories of transition and their impact, but also we have these sort of conversations, which are we like to go deep in the weeds, provide our perspective of, because we were both, you haven't listened to the first episode, we give our intros, but we've both been in Haiti, impacting, doing different things. And so we hope that sharing our perspective helps you when it comes time to do what you're doing, not only in the Haitian community where you are, but also in Haiti, hopefully when you transition. All right. So let's have this conversation, right? There's just incredible amount of things that have been happening. I don't know, Mark, do you want to kind of give, if someone just landed on, from the moon and landed here on Earth, you want to give folks a little quick synapse of what's been happening that's led folks to be, at arms right now?
If you just came from the moon and you landed on Earth, what you need to know as to why things are crazy is that Black people have been oppressed for centuries. Okay. And I think in America specifically and particularly, we've been oppressed in a way that Black people in other places have not. Where after, emancipation of slavery saw that there was, another type of bondage that Black people were subjugated to. And fast forward, we have, Black people who continue to die at the hands of police officers. And I think what is most disheartening is that there's no justice. for these families, and I think that people are losing their lives for no reason at all. And what's scary is that people are losing their lives because of the prejudices that people hold when they see people of color, especially Black people. And so when you have men and women who are continuing to die on a monthly, yearly basis and still no change, you begin to have communities that get tired of it. And when you have a dog that is angry, the dog will eventually bite. And this is what we're seeing now. We're seeing an uprising where people are fed up, people are tired, people are exhausted. To be honest with you, Chris, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I mean, I I went to a predominantly white high school. My family was the first Black family on the block when we moved to the neighborhood when we started high school. And I remember seeing Confederate flags on our block. And this is in the North. This is in PA.
I was going to ask,
I remember, hearing people talk. I remember the looks I got. I was exhausted then. And, knowing that you can die at the hands of a white man and there not be any justice or repercussions for his actions, is tiring. And when you have people who have no other alternative, you have what we have now, which is communities. Every state in the federation has protested. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen that before. We have every single state. Somebody said if North Dakota and South Dakota are protesting, something is wrong.
Yeah, I got a friend who was in Colorado, and she was driving around and literally showed on her just errand commute. She saw people with picket signs with Black Lives Matter, and I was like, she's in the middle of Colorado, middle of nowhere. She's seeing that. She's like, something in the water a little different this time.
So there's something. This is different. I can feel it. I can feel the difference. In between this and some of the other protests. I mean, after Trayvon Martin died, there were protests. After Eric Garner died, there were protests. After Philando Castile died, Sarah Bland, there were protests. But this time, it's kind of, it's a much larger scale, and especially we've seen, I don't know if you saw the Dave Chappelle stand up yet.
The most recent one I just dropped like a day or two ago.
Yes.
No, I haven't seen it yet, but I don't spoil anything. I won't
spoil it. But when you have a cop who kneels on someone's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, it's a long time. One, and then to have no one else do anything, say, hey, bro, like ease up. It just shows a complete disregard for Black life. That's one thing that makes me, I don't know, when I'm in Haiti, I feel exponentially more safe because that would not happen in Haiti. Like, never. The cop would not be able to do that. The people around would not have allowed that to happen. No,
I'm sure you've seen times in Haiti like where a cop is trying to arrest someone wrongly and is physically manhandling that person, and you will see people are not going to take that. They're going to grab the guy, protect the guy. Again, they're not. I don't ever see them. They're particularly malicious to the police, but they're going to do everything to protect that guy. And that's one thing I'm appreciative of being in Haiti, because I know, things can happen anywhere. But I tell you what, it won't be the police.
For sure. And it's just it's tiring, Chris. It's exhausting.
And I know there's supposed to be some. I've heard some places have passed some rules where if a police officer sees like another cop behaving in that sort of way, they're supposed to intervene in a handful of places. But that needs to be nationally. Number one, there needs to be, honestly, for me, there needs to be police body cams on every single officer. And there needs to be a police oversight committee that takes it out of the hands of the unions to investigate, but they investigate independent of political X, Y, and Z, and looking strictly at the facts of the case, right? Because when I have friends in the military, and they tell me that the military really have a tremendous disdain for the police here because of the fact of how the rules of engagement is incredibly open for them, for the police, versus the rules of engagement for the military, You know, the way that you're not allowed to just whip your gun out. You're not allowed to, you know, just arrest, because they know of the real life impact of their actions as arbiters of force. Right. And having the police have no regard. And on top of that, the training a military person has months versus a police officer who goes of maybe a couple of hours, you know, 40, 60, 80 hours, and then gets a badge and a gun and then says, "Go at it, cowboy." It's insane. It's the and furthermore, the entire, you know, apparatus of the United States, where we've given the police all the responsibility to tackle the moral ills and issues of the society, right? Where we don't give money for mental aid, mental care, right? We don't give aid for schooling and giving troubled people alternative means to engage and stay out of trouble. We don't invest. We've devolved in school activities, and we've taken away extracurricular activities like music. When you look at all these structural issues, and we've just said, "Here, cops, go at it." Yeah, it's a massive problem. It's a problem that I mean, I for the good cops, I feel very bad for. And certainly it gives bad cops a credible latitude to behave in the way that we've seen them behave.
For sure. Yep. And when you have that type of leeway, when you have, that type of autonomy, and then you also have hate and fear for a specific group of people, I mean, this is what happens. Cops are so quick to pull out their guns on Black people. I've had guns pulled out on me from policemen.
I think you had a story. Let's share that story with us. I remember you posted about a story that you had yourself, and really interested to get that reshared in a little more detail.
Yeah, so this was maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and my cousin and I were house hunting in Philadelphia, and my cousin saw a few foreclosed houses online, and we went to go check them out. And so we went. This was on a Sunday. This was on a Friday afternoon. We went to one neighborhood. It was a predominantly white neighborhood. My cousin was dressed in black sweatsuit. Was coming from the gym, but I was actually dressed in slacks, a shirt, and a tie because I was on my way to preach at a church. And so I just stopped by with him. And so we get to the house. We pull up. We park the car in the driveway. It looks like it's an abandoned house. There's a for sale sign outside. There's weeds all over. It looks like there's no one in the house. But we go over to the front door. We ring the bell. We knock. No answer. We wait a few minutes. No answer. And it's one of those houses where the driveway and the side of the house is very open, and the backyard is also very open, and you can see. So we're just walking around looking at the house. And so we walk around to the side, which opens up to the backyard. And so, we're just taking a look at the house. And as we're walking in the backyard, we hear something like rustle in the leaves. And I was like, are there dogs, back here? And as we turn around, we just see cops start charging at us with their guns drawn. And, I'm confused. My cousin is confused. And they're yelling, freeze, don't move, get down, put your hands up, all these, typical kind of TV things. I'm like, what? My cousin drops to the ground, but I didn't want to drop to the ground because, first of all, they were yelling so many commands. They were saying freeze, get down, don't move, put your hands up. I'm like, all these contradictory commands. Right, I was like, I don't want to go down, and then, they shoot me because they thought, who knows? We hear these stories.
Right.
A Black person does some kind of movement and they think he's going for a gun, and they shoot. So I just stood there with my hands up. I didn't move. So they run at me. They throw me to the ground, and they put their knee into my back. And the cop that was on me, I'm not sure if he was scared or if he was a rookie or what. But he had his gun in my face and his hands were trembling. And the only thing I can remember, like, this guy's going to shoot me. He's going to shoot me by accident because
That's
he's
crazy.
either scared or I don't know what was going on. And I was telling him, I was like, what's going on? He's like, what are you doing here? Why are you trying to break into the house? And I was like,
To the
break into the
house.
house? I was like, sir, we're here. We're looking at the house. This house is for sale. And, we're telling them that we have here are the papers, the real estate papers. We printed offline. You can look at it. There's a for sale sign. And so, what we gathered was that there were actually people in the house. But when they looked outside and saw two black men ringing the bell, they got scared.
Cowards. So how hard is it just to open your door and say, hey, can I help you?
Exactly. And then what made it worse is because we walked around the side to the back. And so they must have thought that we were trying to break in. So they called the police. And the police came instead of because this is the reality of it. If it was a white guy, if it was two white guys who were at that house and the police came, they wouldn't have rushed at them with guns drawn.
Nope.
They would have came back, sir, may we help you? What are you looking for? But because two black men, they came back as if we were criminals.
Right.
So they didn't believe us. We walked, they handcuffed us. They put us, they walked us to the front. When we walked to the front of the house again, we saw so many cop cars out there. You would have thought, it was a drug raid.
Right. Right.
And I was like, what is going on? They put us in separate cars. They took us to the precinct. They took all of our information. They put us in jail cells.
Wow.
And I was sitting in that cell wondering, did I really do something wrong, or am I in here because I'm black? And it's just indicative of the state of our nation and of the people in this nation.
We were released, no charges, right?
Released with no charges. They looked at our records. I'm sure they thought they were going to find something. When they realized that these guys have clean records, they're not criminals. They let us go without as much as a sorry or have a nice day. Just open the door and we just.
Hearing your story, I wish I was a lawyer so I could pick up that case and sue them for you. Number one. But that's the thing. It was one thing when you hear. Listen. Just the other day, I had a good friend of mine. He's a serial jogger, right? And literally while jogging in his neighborhood, he was called cops. The cops called. The cops. Somebody called the cops on him. Literally, and this is happening right around with Aubrey, Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, and luckily for him, it was a black cop that pulled up and just understand, even the black cop was apologizing. Listen, man, I'm sorry, somebody called the cops on you. There's in an area of Florida called Coral Springs, which as folks know, it's pretty upper middle class ish area, and literally he's out jogging and folks call the cops on him. Right. And so that just goes to show you, number one, folks aren't learning, but it can happen. It happened to you, someone who I know. It could happen to, another close friend of mine. It's like literally, like when we talk about how it could happen to anyone, it can happen to us. We mean it. Like, this this ecosystem of, black males viewed as threats, no matter what they're doing. You feel it when it hits home. Luckily, I've had situations where of course I had run in with the cops. It never escalated to the point where guns have been drawn. But have I been afraid? Have I been fearful? Have I known that yes, I'm being targeted exactly because I'm black? Absolutely. It's happened, and it is one of the most frustrating things of being being American. You know what I mean? Black American specifically.
Yeah, for sure. Very frustrating. And so this is the plight of our people. And so you have people who are fed up, protesting and rioting and all the rest.
That's the crux is, especially when you understand the overall history, the fact that you have, for example, I know you know this, Mark, the amendment that freed or made us not slaves in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really free us. All it
Right.
said was, slavery is not allowed except for. How can you prohibit something but then put an except for clause? An except
Yeah.
for clause is, if there is criminality, right?
Yeah.
And thus all it does then is incentivize the state to make every black person a criminal, to
That's
keep
it.
on the instance of, and so that, to me, I mean, honestly, a real change for me we need a legitimate amendment to the Constitution that says there is no but for, there is no except.
Yeah.
Slavery is illegal,
Yeah.
period. End of story.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And remove this clause of criminality. And that is why to this day, America is the most policed country.
Mhm.
It is the most locked up people. It has more people in prison than any other. I mean, when you have more people in jail than China, who has over a billion people and is communist and is authoritarian and anti-civil rights and all that, and you have more than China. Oh man, you got to reevaluate yourself. You got to reevaluate your entire society and how you've built your laws and legal system. You have to reevaluate. How can you stay on the world stage and say you're for freedom and liberty and all these things that we expound and pound on our chest, and yet you have the most criminalized, the biggest prison industrial system that has ever existed in the history of man. It's insane. It's insane. There's no other word for it. And I think certainly we need to keep pushing. And certainly BLM, I don't let's talk about BLM for a little bit, because BLM meaning Black Lives Matter. And of course, folks who may not know what it is, they may just hear the term, and of course the debates between All Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter. So what folks need to understand is this. Black Lives Matter is an expression to say, hey, we need to focus on issues related to Black lives specifically, right? Just like right now, we're dealing with COVID, right? And us saying we're doing stuff for COVID doesn't mean that cancer doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that measles doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that heart disease doesn't matter. It means we're focusing right now on something that is immediately affecting the lives of millions of people, right? And that's what we mean when we say Black Lives Matter. We're saying, hey, there's other minorities suffering is right now, but right now we need to focus on the amount of injustice that exists specifically to Black people, right? When we're not saying that, there is any, these other qualitative things that's added on, the whatabouts, right? But what about Black on Black crime? Okay, what about white crime? I don't. When you look at the stats, white people are done killed and done theft and etc. by other white people, and that's how it works. Crime is a action of proximity.
Yes, it is.
Period. Right.
Yes, it is.
So that's number one. Folks need to understand that part. But then there's also the Black Lives Matter organization, right, which is founded by 3 women, and it has a lot of other senior women a part of it. And a lot of folks also looking to discredit, this larger issue, like to focus on this organization, right? And I don't know how much you know about it, of this organization, Mark. But I mean, don't get me wrong, they make it pretty easy to be a target. If I'm gonna be fair and balanced here, because when you look on their website, they have a lot of things that folks, it's very easy to cite and make an argument against that organization. When you look at where they get their funding, some people like to say, oh, they're being pushed. The narrative is they're being pushed by big democratic money. Like, the big conspiracy theory is George Soros. Again, I'm just kind of just regurgitating this minutia I hear. And back too. I mean, George Soros really has provided a lot of money to BLM. And so the idea is that George Soros is stoking, very similar to the Russians. They're stoking racial feelings, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other argument too is that the BLM is a very feminist, LGBTQ sort of entity that doesn't really have the primary people who are being inflicted by police brutality, Black men, really as their primary focus, which is what these folks are saying it should be. Because I mean, even when you go to their About Us, they do spend 90 to 95% of the conversation talking about women. I mean, but like this, everyone who's running it are women, so it makes sense that their perspective is going to be incorporated in the About Us, and that's why you have so much of it talk about women issues and motherhood and a bunch of different things, and LGBTQ and rights and everything, which have their importance and have their space and necessity, absolutely. But if this is an organization pushing specifically Black issues, and one of the biggest critiques I'm sure is that a lot of those folks have said that between other minorities, being lumped together with Black issues, but a big thing that have distracted from the progress of equality for specifically Black people has been the coupling of LGBTQ and other issues that have taken precedent, right? I'm not sitting here, I'm not saying any of that doesn't need to be advanced. But when you have an organization called BLM, Black Lives Matter, and the Black lives that are being snuffed out, daily are Black men, right? I kind of see myself in agreement with that train of thought. Is that there needs to be a much more congruent, clear focus from them, not just from a policy perspective, which they have done, but from an overall organization perspective, to make sure that this feeling, and I can't speak to anything else, but this feeling that I get certainly when I go to their page and I review, I really wonder, can they really be for me if I don't see anyone who is me, right, as a Black male on their leadership, and the language also doesn't seem to be very protective of male issues, right?
Right.
So I don't know, what's your thought of BLM, both as the general concept and then the organization, Mark?
Yeah, you said something before that, which I want to second, which is I hear so often, especially from white counterparts, about Black on Black crime. I want to reiterate: there is no such thing as Black on Black crime. It's a fake thing. There's no such thing as Black on Black crime. People get into conflict with people who they are close to, people who they live in proximity to, people who they work with. And in America, where most of our country remains segregated, you are more likely to get in conflict with your neighbor. So it's not a Black on Black crime thing. This is my neighbor. These are the people in my community. And I think there was a statistic back in 2017 where Black people killed by other Black people was around 90%. And everybody was like, oh, wow, look, 90%. And I was like, well, Black people live close to each other, so it's normal to be in conflict. But the numbers for white people who killed other white people was in the high 80s. I was like, guys, there's no such thing as Black on Black crime. So I wanted to reiterate that. The second thing is, I think for me on the Black Lives Matter, I align myself more with the concept rather than the organization. To be honest with you, I don't know much about the Black Lives Matter organization. I know they exist. I know it's led by women, but as far as what their mission, their vision, their funding and all that kind of stuff, I'm not, read up much on them. But as far as a concept, that this phrase, the Black Lives Matter, obviously I align with that. And I think that there's a division in communities. I think for most people align with the words, with the phrase Black Lives Matter. And most don't have a good understanding of what the organization is. So I think that's where kind of the difficulty comes in. But like you said, there's definitely a problem of representation. If the majority of what we're talking about, if the specific ill, what we're talking about is, Black men dying, not only Black men, because there have been Black women as well, Sandra Bland and Breonna Taylor and others. But, if one of, the biggest things is, the vast majority of Black people dying at the hands of police are Black men, then there definitely needs to be some representation of Black men in the organization. And if I just took a quick look on the site, there are no Black men there.
You
So
see what I'm saying, right? You know what I'm saying? It's crazy.
So it is. It is. So I think what we need to maybe disassociate one from the other. The phrase that they've coined, Black Lives Matter, is an obvious phrase that we all agree with, and I can agree with the phrase without particularly subscribing to what the organization puts forth.
Yeah, we're in agreement there. We're definitely in agreement there. And but that brings to the larger conversation to have about activism, right? Is activism the answer, Mark? We've been marching for 30 years, man. Are we gonna keep marching? Is this at some point? I don't know.
Well, you know what I would say, Chris? I would say that activism is not the only answer. Activism alone won't give the change, but activism has brought through a lot of change. I mean, the reason we have Black sports players is due in large part because of activism. The reason why we, have, the whole Montgomery bus boycott, the, sit-ins, all of that activism that led to major change. Just over the past few weeks, there's been so much money donated, to Black causes. There's been, Confederate flags, which is like, it's weird that we're celebrating this. It should kind of be a no-brainer. That's been taken off of state flags and taken off of monuments, all of that because of activism. So I think activism plays a part, but it can't be just activism. And activism alone, protests alone, rioting alone won't get us the real systemic change that we're looking for.
So let's talk about that. See, because that's the thing. Like, there has not been a concerted effort in the alternatives, right? And what to make it clear, for example, when I presented it on my other media platform, Haiti Biz News, and I made it very clear to my audience that my perspective is that we've been marching for so long, and I don't see the structural improvements that are necessary to improve. Because again, I mean, look, sitting in 2020 right now, you look at every socio-economic metric of long life, wealth, life limits, all that. I mean, any specific metric that matters. Black people are, if it's good, if it's a positive, we're very negative.
Yeah.
And if it's a negative thing, we're leading it, right? In every category. Okay. And so, and when you sit back and look at that, you're like, something else needs to happen. And when you understand that, when in the country we're living in, right, everything is tied to wealth, income, right, and how you accrue that. We have to start having these conversations about, okay, how do we go in that direction where we're improving wealth as a group? And when you look at certain stats, and I can make a whole show about this, so I'm going to try to keep it brief here. For example, I recommend folks to look at and grab the work of Dr. Claude Anderson. He has some incredible books that I think really helps understand some of the plights of Black people, though he focuses on African Americans, but the plight of Black people everywhere on the planet, honestly, because it's honestly the same argument where, for example, Power Economics, is a very important book for me, especially, where it talks about how folks need to, when you look at the circulation of the dollar, in Black communities, it doesn't circulate at all. When other communities, in like the Mexican community, 3 to 4 times, in the Jewish community, 18 times, in the white community, 10 or so times, right? And so when you look at, how we behave, Black people ourselves are accountable here, right? The old expression, the white man's ice tastes better, right? And that's true for even in Haiti. Even in Haiti, when you go there and the foreign product always has preference and always has a higher degree of status to it versus made in Haiti goods and products and material and what we're culture. I mean, culturally, even the fact that voodoo and voodoo is a big part of who we are and how we got free, but we don't. It's not even about embracing it, but at least or celebrating it, but at least recognizing it right? And then putting it at a place of I don't want to even respect is too big of a word, but sort of acknowledgement. It doesn't. It either folks completely hate it or they're completely into it, right? So we have these arguments, and just go, maybe just economic but cultural. But there is a lack of value of self and lack of value of supporting each other economically in the way that matters the most. And the conversations really need to be there. When I lived in Chicago for a while, Mark, and I can tell you on the South Side, by the way, and I can tell you the area that had the most sustained ecosystem and infrastructure is an area community called South Shore on the South Side. Mm-hmm. And guess what's in the South Shore, Mark? You ready for this? Mm-hmm. Nation of Islam. Mm. And the Nation of Islam is all about working together economically, supporting each other, themselves, folks who are in the group economically within, keeping the money within, shopping amongst each other, keeping and I can tell you when you go to the South Shore specifically, though there's a lot of non-Nation of Islam folks there as well, but that area has maintained a lot of its dignity, right, mm-hmm. as compared to the surrounding area of the South Side, even though South Side, compared to the West Side in particular, is overall much better, but has maintained a lot of its dignity and a place to a point where you actually would want to live there, right? Because it has this foundational root where the Nation of Islam, they're running businesses there, they're supporting each other there, and they have and the ripple effects just kind of go to the rest of the community, who don't adhere to it, right? And so that right there is proof to me that there is truth in economically empowering ourselves and sticking to that group. I mean, listen, Haiti, Haitians, little Haiti, there's a specific thing happening and gentrification is happening, right? As it is in every other, Black low income area, and Little Haiti is no exception. But then it's very easy to say, oh, these developers and Starbucks and they're coming in, but ask yourself, how many folks from Little Haiti do you know, right? And I said there's Little Haitis everywhere, by the way. I'm not saying specifically Little Haiti in Florida, mm-hmm. or the new recently christened Little Haiti in Brooklyn, I believe. Yeah. Little Haitis, there's every state has a Little Haiti. Pennsylvania, the ones, right? And so ask yourself that Little Haiti, how many folks who have graduated high school, college, have come back to that area, or come back to reinvest in that area, or bought land, right? But yet every other community, they do that. They will go off, but then they'll come back and invest in their specific areas. Haitians don't do it. Black people don't do it. And it's a PI. And of course, the areas where Black people, when white flight happened, Black people moved in. It's prime real estate. It's very convenient areas that Black folks have been residing in. And for example, Little Haiti in Florida, it's in like a slightly elevated terrain that's with global sea change or global warming and the water's rising. A lot of folks are trying to move in there now. And so if we had only took value ourselves and changed our behavior, right, instead of immediately, okay, great, Jim Crow is done. Okay, let's move to the areas where we're not even wanted. It's insane. It's crazy, and especially when you understand how reasons why those areas have low education and attainment in terms of the schools, because of the system of property tax, the fact that when we leave, we don't come back, we don't reinvest, we don't raise those property rates by buying at a higher amount. It's lower property taxes, and the schools have less, so it's a self-perpetuating system we have, mm-hmm. but it starts with us. And so just to kind of wrap this up here, because I can go on for a show, believe me, mm-hmm. on this, I know. is that I think the solution, instead of activism, we've been doing it. We need to literally galvanize ourselves, try to push back the stereotype of us not being able to work together. We've been able to work together. We can work together. Absolutely, we can. We just have to push back that stereotype that we've even associated with ourselves about that, and say, okay, what can we do to change our behavior? Can we go in groups, in real estate groups, with some associates, so start buying land in the homes that were in the areas that we grew up in? Can we then turn around and do certain things like sign up for Section 8 and make these areas affordable, right? In this way, have a set sort of income, to protect our investments, right? There's so many different ways to go about it. And I wish we could, if I can get half the people in the streets to just literally, and it doesn't have to be a big time money baller. You get 100 black men, each of them give $50 into an account, right? And then after about a year, they take that money and they buy a property, and then they fix it up, and then they keep giving $50, and that money is going to start to accrue. It's going to start gaining traction, and next thing you know, you have a fund that can then turn around, and those same 100 people who've been given that money can tap into themselves to start operating businesses themselves in the same areas they're investing in. Like literally, with a single generation, Mark, we can really get into that. The fundamental issue here is of not having wealth, not having capital, not having the capacity to enrich ourselves, and which can then trickle to the other socioeconomic metrics that affect us. That's where I'm at, man. And I'm so passionate about it. That's why I can't. I can't.
I agree.
But I see that's the solution, and it is so frustrating, Mark. So frustrating that you don't have enough people acting on it. I moved to Haiti to start businesses, to start employing and working with other folks and highlighting them, because I put my money where my mouth is. I see what the solution is and I act on it. Other people say they see the solution on it, but they still act. They still just do this activism, and then they go right back to the 9 to 5 and X, Y, and Z that has not given the group and or even themselves the solution they need. And it's frustrating. Man. It's frustrating.
I definitely agree. I think economics is the key. Towards the freedom and the liberty that we're looking for. But I do think that those things can be done in a parallel fashion. That investing in our community doesn't have to take away from activism, and activism doesn't take away from putting together and starting a business. I think that those can be done in a parallel fashion. They can be done together. They're not mutually exclusive. But let me ask you a question, Chris. Mm-hmm. When was the first time you heard about stocks and bonds? And who did you hear about it from?
Great question. I always just been really interested in it. But I do remember in high school, in our economics class, did have an economics class, and it was talked about, and we actually even did a mock game of stocks for like half of the semester, where we kind of picked stocks, and you were given a certain amount of extra credit points based on the performance of those stocks. So you have a little bit of incentive to kind of keep track and try to play the game. And so fortunately for me, I did have that exposure structurally, but I also knew of it. But you're right. I never really got that. Certainly wasn't for my parents. It wouldn't have been for my parents, right?
Right. And that's where I'm getting at. And you went to your school. You went to, was it predominantly black, predominantly white, mixed?
So the school I was supposed to go to would have been predominantly black, but then they just had opened up. Literally the year I was going to high school, they opened up a magnet high school. Mm-hmm. That was a Pompano Beach high school that had just reopened, and that was you had to get a certain score to get in, right? Mm-hmm. and stay in, but it was very mixed, very diverse. I want to say maybe it was only 30 to 40% black, and it was a bunch of other races. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it wasn't your typical school. In fact, I did like half a year or 3/4 of a year at Blanche Ely, because when I first started, I was like, I don't have any of my friends, and I transferred out like a dummy. Mm-hmm. and literally after about a year, I was like, holy crap, I'm going to be a McDonald's fry flipper my whole life. My GPA was like less than 2.0. And I'm like, wait a minute, I got to get my stuff together. Mm-hmm. So I spent the next year getting my GPA up. So my junior year, I was able to get back to Pompano Beach High School and be a part of, that environment. And that's also when I got a part of that economics class that, did stocks. And so I can tell you, being at the other school, I mean, the resources of the Blanche Ely was nothing compared to Pompano Beach High. I mean, the teachers didn't take themselves serious. The students, a lot of the students didn't take stuff serious. Versus when I got to the quote unquote better school, the teachers cared, and the students also were engaged. And so yeah, the environment matters. I see where you're going, Mark.
Right, environment matters, and what I'm trying to show is that, for example, for me, the first time I heard about stocks and bonds, and first time I heard about Roth IRAs was from a white boy at my job. When I was working at a hotel in college, he was telling me, yeah, you need to, invest in the Roth IRA and get this stock. And I was like, what? Stocks? But he learned it from his family, because his family has a history and a lineage of wealth. Black people, we were just allowed to vote a few decades ago. We're just getting started in this race. Literally, we're just getting started in this race. So for a lot of us, our generation, this Black generation now, my kids, your kids, they are going to be the generation who comes in with this knowledge that we didn't have, with this information, with this mindset. And I really think that the transformation will be seen in their generation, because we didn't have that. I didn't have that growing up, but a lot of these white, kids, they grow up with that already built to their system. My parents didn't have stocks coming from Haiti. Many Black American families don't have stocks for their kids. But my white friends, they had stocks of Disney when they were, 3 years old. And so, I mean, the race, they started the race a long time ago, and we're just getting started, which is why we're so far behind. And so I agree with you. The economic thing is the biggest thing. It's at the foundation. But because we're just getting started, we're way behind. But I do think that, with what we know now, and with, our history and the fervor and the desire we have to be free and liberated, really, that our children will really benefit, and be the generation that sees the turnaround.
Certainly my kids will be that. Your kids will be that. But the reality, Mark, is that the majority of Black America still, are locked into a pattern that isn't going to help them or improve their wealth, because they still don't know about stocks. They still don't know about, 401ks and how to use IRAs. And so certainly, I think there needs to be a push for literacy in finances. A lot of folks are doing that. I have a lot of good friends who are part of that aspect of really pushing education of the financial literacy specifically. And so that needs to continue, right? And I think that's ultimately where we need to go, right? And the last piece too I want to talk about too is, let's bring it all the way home to Haiti. Let's bring it home specifically to Haiti and talk about race in Haiti. Right. And this right there could be its own episode. May have to bring it back at some point. But I can tell you, moving to Haiti, that's one of the most disheartening aspects of being in Haiti, of moving to Haiti and being exposed to the incredible degree of colorism that exists. How here's so to folks to understand what I mean. So as you folks know, I run a staffing company in Haiti. And initially when I first got there, I was strictly domestic facing. I worked with domestic firms, period, right? And one thing I saw really quickly, it was how, first off, just walking around the offices, you can tell without even out of you don't need a manager's uniform to know who's a manager in Haiti. Just the color of their skin, you know who the manager is, right? So that's one thing, just seeing that, right? But then secondly, when for me, as part of the hiring practices, and you send people who are extremely qualified, for what they're being asked, what the company's asking you to give them, and your person gets sent back because, and then you don't really understand why. But then when you get a chance to sit one-on-one with the human resource person in the room, and they say, "Listen, Chris, listen." We're looking for somebody with a little foreign look, and I say foreign look. You know what I mean. Because listen, when I really dig at them and say, no, give me a real reason why this person wasn't accepting. Oh, listen, here's the reality. This position, for example, is a collections agent, or the collections in Haiti. The way it works is, literally, this person is going to go to the bureau of another business and ask for money. Right. This is just one example of so many. And they say, listen, you can't have, you know who's running these businesses. You know who's the managers and stuff. They're people of a particular look. Right. Yeah. And so you can't have someone of a lower class look come in demanding money from this upper class person. You see, it has to be someone who looks like them to have it be something they would accept, right? And this is just, I mean, this is, listen, candid conversations. I mean, wow, right? And of course, this goes on and on in terms of, again, you see this in America, kind of the same rationale where you'll see, the cooks in the kitchen in the back being black, and then the lighter, fairer people being either receptionists and or the waiters or waitresses. That same sort of rationality of what's presentable and what is class, right? And so, and Haiti has been this since its inception, like the whole mulatto versus black, and it's been this has always been a concern that has not been able to rectify itself. We have never been able to really, even our flag is all about bringing two peoples together. We've never lived up to the ideals in and I can say that I can tell you one reason why I also changed my staffing company to where I work only now with companies from abroad coming in, because they don't have that. In fact, most of the folks who are coming in, they say, Chris, in fact, I want to make sure I have a few candidates who are women, and just really, just equal opportunity. They're coming in with their right concepts, and that's who I want to work for. And then secondly, too, the companies I build, I mean, if you ever come to my office, I think you have come to my office, Mark, you've seen my employees, right? My employees, there's no foreign look in my employees. My employees are Haitian, I'm proud of that. I don't, and they're Haitian, by the way, because, honestly, they're the best fit for my job. I try to really legitimately get the best fit, and the best fit for what I do have been the people who look Asian. But I'm not going to go the other way too. At the same time, I'm not going to I'm not going to hire any mulattoes. No, it's going to be whoever's best for the job. Period.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's my experience. From a staffing perspective. What's your experience been from a colorism?
Colorism has been, like you said, very disheartening. In Haiti, coming to Haiti, I thought that I was going to come to a country where finally Black people would be the leaders. Black people, when you come back to Haiti, you're thinking, first Black Republic, African, descendants, Black people are running our country. And I got back to Haiti and I found out really quickly that's not the case. In most of the places I went to, places I visited, whether it be restaurants, hotels, businesses, it wasn't Black people who were the owners. It wasn't Black people who were running it. It was either white people or mulattoes. And then they were looking at me like I was the foreigner. That's what killed me. They were looking at me like I was the one who was out of place. And then, the worst part, they start speaking in French, and I'm like, speak Creole. I don't speak French. And it's been really, really a tough pill to swallow. And coming from America and living in the context of, growing up racist, Black men in America experiencing racism, you grow up with this kind of Black power, maybe not militant, but really, you want to kind of support your people. And when you go back home and you see that what exists in America exists also in your home country, it hurts. It hurts a lot. And the other thing that hurts is that a lot of people don't see it the way I see it, because they haven't grown up in, the way that I've grown up. And so it's a tough pill to swallow, man. It's hard.
And that's another thing too. I want to make it clear for those who are listening is that, personally, we're not against people who are not Haitian running businesses and being in management positions. Hey, we're not. That's not the concern or problem for us, right? It's that there's something structurally preventing those who are not them to rise up to their level in their country.
Correct.
Which is madness, right? And one thing that bothers me is that, what the Haitian native experiences, that's one thing, right? But then when you go to these resorts, you go to these really nice restaurants, and you see that the people who are enjoying, I like to say, the fruits of my ancestors, struggle. Okay, especially like the resorts and the beaches and everything.
Yeah.
Are non-Haitians.
Yeah,
You
for
go
sure.
there, and it's everyone, like, literally. I remember I've been to Cameroon. I've been to, and where I've honestly can count the amount of Black people there, much less Haitians, in one
Mhm.
hand. Everyone
Mhm.
else isn't. And again, that's nothing's wrong with that. In fact, we like seeing people come in and enjoy our fruits. But when there is no people from the country able to enjoy those fruits at the same time, there's
Yeah.
something wrong with that, right? But then more fundamentally is that, okay, again, Haitian natives experiencing one thing, but what's preventing a Haitian diaspora from getting on a plane and coming and enjoying the fruits of our ancestors' struggle,
Mhm.
right? And that gets to the bigger conversation. And honestly, why I do what I do with SeeJeanty is to help break what we've been trained in terms of, Haiti's unsafe and this and that. But what that has led to has been a generation, almost two generations now, multiple generations. In fact, if you really count Duvalier and how repressive his regime was that you have Black people who have not been able to invest and really, get a position of class and economics to change the
Yeah.
visualness of what is seen in the
Yeah.
country, right? And that's really what it goes. I mean, a lot of it almost always boils down to individual action, or more specifically, inaction, from us, right? So it's very easy to critique, what we're seeing. But then we have to ask ourselves, again, this isn't you, Mark, but I know a lot of folks who are, oh, I can't buy, go in and, there's an Asian guy who's running the retail store. And I always ask them, number one, why didn't your dad go back to Haiti and and why didn't your mom did? And why aren't you trying? Right? If your parents tried and had bad experiences, why don't you try? Because that's how we can change the overall, perspective of what we're seeing and what we're experiencing, from a socioeconomic perspective. And that's why, again, SeeJeanty and all the content I do is really to help encourage, foster the thought, give detailed guides, because it's not easy to do business. Hey, we know it's not easy, right? But to foster guides to how to overcome the challenges, right? To maximize your chance of success, right? And finally, right, how to show that even if you're not for Haiti to do business, what awesome experiences and activities exist
Yeah.
that you can plug yourself into, and really at least have your dollars circulate in the economy by coming to the country and buying food from artisans, and buying, pieces of work of art from these craftsmen, and on and on and on and on. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so that's a
Yeah.
big part in dismantling the colorism, is by you who doesn't have that warped perspective
Yeah.
being engaged in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how you change it.
And thanks for clarifying that. What you said is exactly correct. Our issue is not with, other people having ownership. Our issue is that there's a systematic, there's systems in place that keep our people out. That's the issue. There's a systematic, process in place, and structures in place that keep African descendants out of the economic system,
Right.
and that is the problem. That is a problem.
Yep. And again, it's the same. And what's so messed up? It's the same systems we see in America, for example. It starts with the education system,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Those who are Black go to these lesser schools. A lot of them are in rural schools that are underinvested, underdeveloped, right? Versus those who aren't, they go to the best schools, right? So that's the start of the issue. And then on top of that, in terms of access, Haiti is very much who you know. Who you know is what determines how far you get,
big time.
and the fact that these folks know the current capitalistic owners of commerce versus those who are Black don't, right? That's another big disadvantage. And then finally, as always, all roads lead to the government, and a lot of things a government could do to help rectify these disadvantage issues, they don't, right? We have a government that is completely inoculated from functioning as a government, right? In terms of acting policies that can help its population as a whole, right? And its population as a whole is 80 to 90% Black, and there is nothing being done really to help empower people. And that's really, the blame needs to go there, because they're a government that's supposed to be for the people, right? But then when you take a step back further, we just can't just stay there and just blame them. We when the Haitian diaspora have to engage our part and be part of that larger structural response. And that's my side of colorism. Of course, something we can talk about more. I don't know what else you want to add to your experience and perspective to colorism.
Yeah, I think Haiti's a very special place, with history of Taino natives, history of French and Spanish. Obviously, the majority of our ancestry going back to Africa, and so there are a lot of different shades of people. And when while the majority of us are African looking, there are different shades of people, and I think we need to have understanding and love and inclusion for all people, understanding that Haitian comes in different flavors, but we also need to be understanding again of the specific issues that plague a specific group of people, which happens to be the majority of the people. So yeah, it's a big problem. Yeah.
And it's so multi-layered, right? Because I remember Dimitri Vorb did a live recently that got snippeted and got distributed. I'm sure you had to have seen it, Mark, where basically he was talking about how colorism is a problem, right? And the person who is maybe on his live, talking crap about him, saying, you're this and that, you are where you are because of your skin color, He said, he's like, listen, that same guy who's talking shit about him, if he were to go into his office, he would open up a chair. Do you want any water?
Yeah.
How can I help you? Give him a loan, give him premier diamond status access to every aspect of his business. But then that same guy who's critiquing him and giving him all this when he walks in, let a Black guy come in. Black, dark-skinned Haitian man come in, no matter how well dressed. Gonna give him the side eye. Yeah. Let me validate. Let me verify. Give me your proof of documentation. I guess after a certain amount of months, I guess I'll then decide to kind of give you. You see, so the even amongst those who critique, they themselves have bias.
For sure.
Compared to when somebody comes in who looks like a Vorb versus I don't know, a Moise, for lack of just instant thinkable, dark-skinned person, right? And so, it's such a layered situation, and it's going to take a lot longer to unravel that, but in our society. But I can tell you, I always ask, okay, the issues are complex, but what can I do, right, my day to day, and certainly being in the country, connecting with people who view things the right way, like I do. And myself acting in the right way. That's all really I can do, in addition to talking about the issue. But I've certainly never been one who just talks about the issue. I act while I talk, right? I can do, it's like chewing gum and patting my belly. I can do both. And a lot of other people can do both too. And I challenge people to do both. Right?
Yes.
So that's the episode. I think we had a lot of big talking points there. This here,
and I'm really interested to the people who are listening. It would be great, even if they just comment wherever they're listening, whether it be on social media or what have you. We'd be really interested in hearing what your thoughts are as well.
Yeah, I agree. If you're listening, I'd love to hear your perspective. If it's on YouTube, if it's on Facebook, if it's on Apple Podcasts, Google, they all have comment features. And so I'd love to, drop a comment or just message myself. Marc Antoine's on Facebook, has a page, I believe. I'm on SeeJeanty, IG. Just, send your perspective to us if how you listen to it didn't have a inherent way to drop a comment, because this is a conversation that needs to happen amongst us. And certainly this won't be the last time we talk about it. There's so many different elements a part of this, and the news and the effect of colorism on things, and police brutality and Black Lives Matter isn't going to go anytime soon. And so we're going to have to re-engage it as time goes on. But certainly, I certainly would hope that as time goes on, the nature of it improves, because we, especially, maybe we're talking about police brutality in terms of people just getting beat up, but I hope in a couple years we're not still talking about Black men being killed, right? I can only hope, that we can finally move in a direction where that's not happening all the time, So
yes.
Yeah. So next week next episode we have an incredible guest who's going to be providing an important perspective on her experience. And I'm going to leave it at that. I do want you guys to make sure to tune in and catch that episode, particularly if it's related to a perspective of deportation, right? So make sure to catch that episode. It's really important. And of course, guys, this has been Ma Pimpo Haiti, the Haitian Diaspora Live in Haiti podcast. We're on all those different streams. If however you're listening to it, give it that like, give it that follow. We're about having sort of conversations. And Mark, listen, I want to thank you for being my co-host and driving that level of discussion, man. I really feel I've gained something from this, man.
Yeah, thank you for just always being open to talk about these really important issues and providing practical perspectives. So I really hope that our listeners enjoyed it, and looking forward to hear what they have to say, and looking forward to next week, brother.
Awesome. Listen, guys, until we're back at it again, we'll be back at it again. Peace.